Hey guys, just like that. Okay, why is it black? Oh, yeah, but why is it black? Oh, there we go. Okay. Hi guys. Hold on, let me take this out. Hey guys, and welcome to a non-scripted. I mean, not that our shows are ever scripted, but this is kind of like an emergency broadcast um, about the post-election results, especially here in Miami. And we want to discuss the blue wave that happened, why this happened, what could happen in the runoff election. But most importantly, we want to discuss what Bella particularly has been exposing on her Instagram page, which is what we like to call the Miami Media Matrix, and how they have successfully completed a coup, a silent coup in the City of Miami Commission, and how they have been successful in brainwashing Republicans into thinking that their biggest opposition are actually Joe Carollo, 70-year-old Joe Carollo, the biggest villain in the city, apparently, and just other Republicans who have gotten caught in the middle of a firestorm between multi-millionaire developers, media operatives, and much more. It's something that we've been tracking for years now, right, Bella? You could. Mm-hmm. Wait, I don't. Why can't I hear it from here? Can you hear me? You can hear me? That's so strange. I can't hear this video. Let me see. I don't get it. Why can't I hear you? Let me see. I may have to just play from here.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. I can. Had you muted me?
No, I had my microphone turned on for whatever reason, it had picked up the phone on the conversation that we were on.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
What were you talking about?
I think that probably one of the most relevant parts, which I hadn't even considered about where we should start, is how we ended up here, right? Because so much of this happens behind the scenes that even people like you and I that do pay attention for the most part, like had no idea how deep this went until we were attacked by this machine, right? Until we end up at school board meetings, after we end up on the other side of these like smear campaigns where you've got local media attacking just like regular private citizens, attacking parents. And then you start tracking things and you start putting things together. You start putting the... Do you hear Frank?
No.
No, my dog was like making really weird noises. All right. You start tracking these names that start showing up time and time and time and time again, and you start seeing a pattern where it's like, oh, wait a minute, how come every time that a conservative is accused of quote unquote corruption or something, an ethics complaint is filed, or citizens are getting together to file a lawsuit, or somebody disrupts an event, how come it's the same group of people every single time? And I think that pattern recognition has now led us to kind of like see that in reverse, where we're watching those very people that kept on coming up time and time again. And as a result, we see where the next project is at, where the next target is at, who they're going after next. And, I think that one of the largest targets and what we've seen consistently is the operation to flip the city of Miami, to take back the city of Miami. And it's an operation that we've seen not just through Joe Carollo, we saw it through Alex Díaz de la Portilla, we saw it through Vicky Méndez, and the repetition of these names of the Billy Corbins, of the Carl Rosses, of the Thomas Kennedys, of the JC Planas, of the David Winkers. How many times can you see these names over and over and over and over before you recognize that there is a pattern? But then also, how can you see these names over and over again alongside some of the most vile, horrendous things that could be said about conservatives, about Trump supporters, about MAGA, about the people of this community, about Cuban Americans, about people who flee communism, and in any shape, way, or form, not at minimum, have some degree of conscious caution to, maybe if those people are endorsing somebody I should take caution to that. Instead, what we've been I think for some, it's very obvious the psyop work, because what we've been met with is people who don't understand why we would ever defend a Joe Carollo. How could you defend Joe Carollo? He's so corrupt. You should be on the right side of this. And yeah, I mean, per usual.
The right side is Billy Corbin, by the way. That's the right side, who Republicans have unfortunately joined them on this, because this is why we say that they have succeeded in their coup, in their silent coup. But before we get to all that, there was obviously a blue wave in Miami. We saw, and I want to pull up this chart so you guys see how bad this was. Obviously, you can see the blue compared to the red for Emilio González, who was he wasn't endorsed by the GOP. Now he is the local GOP, but you would say the establishment DeSantis-backed candidate. And then Eileen Higgins, who, this is going to be a toss-up race. It's whoever energizes the base more, but it is likely that she will be the next mayor of the city of Miami with all that blue. Now, we are locals. I get to vote in the city of Miami. I live around this area over here, closer to like the water. Obviously, this is where most of the transplants are living now, which we were waiting for this election to see how are these people going to vote, right? And what we find out is they voted very, very blue. So they are bringing, despite what people said, oh no, these people are not going to vote blue because they're coming from New York and they know what it's like, and they're coming from San Francisco and Los Angeles. Well, they haven't left their patterns behind. They are, in fact, voting very, very blue. I mean, like, there's like a little patch of red right here and like here. And then once you get to the yellow, which is Republican, Joe Carollo, but that's more of a populist message, you see that it doesn't compare to the massive blue wave. So elections are very simple, right? A lot of people, or especially Republicans, especially since the 2020 election, they have just made it into everything is a hoax, everything. They just steal everything from us. They're cheating. They are, everything's about cheating the system. Very simple. There's a certain amount of registered voters, Republicans, Democrats, and MPAs. And whoever is able to get their base to show up in these small elections, where the turnout is as little as 14-15%, or like ours this past Tuesday was 21.5 or something like that. And
that's good turnout, by the way. That's really good turnout.
Right? So it's so small that if you just get your base to show up, you win, right? Now, we have a very weak GOP. We have a local GOP who doesn't do shit, okay? The first text message that they sent us about the election was on election day at 2:56 p.m. I know that because I am registered with them. I am also a registered Republican voter, right? And I'm registered to the GOP's text message, whatever, their email stuff. So I get their stuff when they send. They didn't do a campaign 90 days before the election to alert people about the upcoming election, make sure that they're registered to vote, make sure that if they moved, they changed their address, make sure that they know their polling, their precincts. They didn't do anything at all. Okay.
No, they didn't do any of that, which adds to the problem,
Nothing.
right? Which is, it's a three-part problem. So number one, we've got the people that are out of state, the out-of-staters that are coming in that we didn't know how they were going to vote. Now we know how they're voting, right? You've got an apathetic GOP. There's no excitement. There's no energizing that's happening. It's to the point that you've made several times already, where it's like, all right, we're going to get rid of the dynasties. We're going to get rid of the Joe Carollos. We're going to get rid of all those people. But to replace them with what? With somebody low energy. You can't compare it to, as we were pulling the election results, and as you posted on your page today, to Francis Suarez,
who got 80% of the vote the first time around, and then 78% the second time around. And then, I still had, I don't want to say the R word on YouTube, but I still had people in my comments like, oh, you think he did a good job or not? I'm like, he wins elections.
Right.
Like, winning elections. Like, you're not
Can you raise money? Can you win elections? That's all that matters. If you can't do either of those things, then you're not, forget being a good politician. You can't be a politician at all.
So he can win it. Like, anyways, we're not here to discuss. Also, I just want to make sure that people know that the mayor of City of Miami is more of a symbolic thing. They don't really have a lot of power. They only veto. So the real power comes in the commission, which is why the second segment of this live is going to focus on how Democrats have infiltrated the commission to flip it blue. Because 4 years ago, we had a very strong, not just Republican, but a very strong MAGA City of Miami commission, right? These are the guys that held the real power, and then Francis Suarez would veto something or not. Anyways, it's the GOP, or not the GOP, but the DeSantis-backed GOP, Emilio González, they try to present him as an outsider, where those of us who live in the city of Miami, have lived here for years, knew that he was a city manager before. So that message is not necessarily gonna resonate with people who live here, who've been here for a while, because they're like, this guy was in the city already. But I think the bigger message here, just not here in Miami, we saw that Latinos in Virginia and New Jersey, and obviously in New York, where there was elections, they went blue. They voted Democrats. So all of the hard work that Trump did to bring in over Latinos last election cycle, especially here in South Florida, lost. Complete loss. Yeah. Okay. And we see that it's very hard to win these elections without a message of MAGA populism, especially in Miami. And I think part of that is because we're just not the same city we were in 2020. People are priced out of their homes. There are people that have left Miami because they simply couldn't afford it anymore, and they're moving to other places around the state or out of state. Some are even going to like South America to live at a cheaper cost. And then you have this fight between the GOP establishment against the MAGA base, which I think you can touch on that, where they want power again. And they've never been with Trump's message of populism. That never resonated with the GOP. That's just the truth. So as they see that Trump has an expiration date, because he's not going to run for re-election, there's not going to be a third term, this is not going to happen, they want their establishment back. They want to get back to a pre-Trump era while still trying to keep the base that Trump brought over. That's what I see.
Well, because I think that they're delusional. They think that the base belongs to the GOP and not to Trump. Mm-hmm. And this is something that we saw with the primaries when DeSantis thought that he could run a race against President Trump and that he could strong arm Florida legislators to endorse him over Trump. And we already know how it was that things turned out when they were in Ohio, right? Because there's a dead cat's bounce, if you will, with the GOP that existed pre-Trump, that lost power to Trump populism, as you said, to MAGA. And as a result, are now paying attention very closely to see if MAGA continues to have momentum without Trump.
Right. And
MAGA continue to have momentum without Trump. And how do they do that? Oh, by looking at places like City of Miami, by running candidates here in the City of Miami, trying to, what we've seen, the opposition, again, like we saw with the primary and like we're seeing right now with the City of Miami. I would argue that obviously the out-of-towners are in here and they have changed the dynamic some, but the reality is that historically the City of Miami has always voted blue.
Right.
That is what
Harris won.
The uniqueness of it is the uniqueness of it is President Trump. that's what changed everything. The end result of how people showed up to vote had everything to do with Trump, because the city of Miami has always historically been a blue area.
Mhm.
So I think that part of what we're watching right now is, if there isn't to the point that you're making, which is if there isn't that Trump level of enthusiasm for a candidate, then there is not enough energy to get Republicans to go out to vote. And I think that a really important point to make is that, a few months ago, and I believe that we have an episode on this that we talked about it, which was when the Miami-Dade GOP claimed that Miami-Dade had flipped red, and it was this historic thing, and Miami-Dade had flipped red, when in reality it hadn't been flipped by the sake of having more Republican voters registered. It was simply a matter that they had more inactive Democrat voters that by result had been cleaned out of the voter rolls, meaning that they hadn't voted in 2 election cycles. So that means governor 2022 and the presidential election of 2020. So a Democrat that didn't vote in 2020 or in 2022 would have been considered not active, and as a result removed from the voter rolls. But the only thing that you have to do to get back onto the voter rolls is just show up and vote. So if they're excited now, if they're excited about the idea of taking back the city of Miami, I think that a lot of the undaunting thing that we're seeing out of New York is also lighting some kind of enthusiasm to the Democratic vote. Even in Miami, I think that we're seeing that. I think that we're watching that in other big cities that are watching what's happening in New York, and Democrats feel empowered by that. And as a result, we have more Democrats that have to get out a lesser percentage of their vote, because by the sheer number that there's more of them, less of them have to show up for a larger percentage to be represented at the voting booth than with Republicans that have less registered Republicans, but also don't have the momentum or the excitement behind them because there is no MAGA candidate running.
Yeah, there's no MAGA candidate running, and the message of populism isn't there. And the reality is that most people are struggling to pay their bills. They're struggling to pay their rent. They're having to move out. They're not seeing prices drop like they expected to see. I actually did see some TikToks on Spanish-speaking Hispanic like media, people going around Hispanic grocery stores like Presidente and Sedanos and saying, these prices are lower. Some of them are saying that the gas is significantly lower here in Miami, but not enough for people to be excited, right? And so, we've discussed also the DeSantis war, which most people, if you're just an average voter and you like the governor, you don't necessarily see the governor separated from Trump and MAGA. But the reality is that there has been that separation, that drift since
there's been a Florida Cold War since the primaries.
Since the primaries before the 2024 election. Because DeSantis wants to be the kingmaker, and he knows that his term is coming to an end. There's a reason he hasn't endorsed Byron Donalds, and he's not going to because he wants to run his own candidate. There's a reason he started a war with Daniel Perez, who's the Speaker of the House, somebody that's a local representative here in Miami. And there is a reason why he endorsed this candidate, Emilio González, as someone who he would strategically place here in the city of Miami. And most of you are going to think that it's not a big deal at all because you're just an average voter and you like the governor, and we agree that he's done great things. But the reality is that he wants to differentiate himself from the MAGA populism that they just absolutely hate. Because let's be honest, the GOP has never been the party of the working class. That's something that Trump made happen. That's Trumpism, right? It's like the first time that Michael Moore even has that one video from 2016 where he shows all these white people in Ohio at an Ohio rally or something. And he goes on to say that these are the forgotten people of America, whose jobs had left to China, whose families are dying of an overdose, etc. And it's the first time that a politician sees them for who they are and wants to help them. Where the Latinos are in the same population, most of Miami is not the glitz and glamour of Brickell and South Beach and downtown Miami, where a 1-1 is costing you $3,000. we were able to afford a startup home for $300,000. Now, those same startup homes are $750,000 plus. They're probably very shitty and pretty far away. You can't even get something like that in Kendall. You can go to Hialeah. You can get that in Westchester. Forget Coral Gables because they're $1 million plus. So people are having to move out, live with multiple family members in one house, multiple families, or go very south to like Homestead. And even then, a startup home is going to cost you over, $500,000. That was not the case before in 2020. So when you don't have a GOP that understands this message, and what is Emilio running on? Number one is get corruption out of City Hall. That sounds good for people, I guess, for people that are not struggling to pay the rent, or people that are not struggling because they live in Little Havana and developers are taking over your city, right? But for the rest, the bigger population of Miami, the heavy concentrated areas, that does nothing for them. And we don't know, we've been talking about this today, what it is that Higgins, I have no idea what her campaign is, right? Like, I don't know what these door knockers are saying because we're not subscribed to the Democratic Party's email blast, text blast. We're not getting hit by any ads. At least I'm not. I got one text from her. But her message, from what I see, is relying on affordability. She talks a little bit about getting the craziness out of City Hall. But I think her message is resonating a lot more with these Democrats than the Republican guy, Emilio González, is. And it shows here. This is another very interesting, data point, I guess, because, we're talking about Trump versus Harris precinct in the city of Miami. And Higgins is way ahead in the Harris precinct. Obviously, that would be the, pretty obvious. But she's also competitive in the Trump precinct. And that's problematic because that means that her message is getting through to voters that voted Trump last election. And they're not scared of the GOP's, Eileen Higgins is going to be the socialist that's going to bring in communism. People are shutting that out. They're not afraid of that anymore. They're just not. They've lost fear of the socialism scary word and the communism scary word because at this point they're like, okay, but I'm being priced out of my home. But there's developers all around me changing my neighborhood, right? Little Havana doesn't look like Little Havana anymore. It looks like Wynwood. Wynwood doesn't look like Wynwood anymore. It's a mess. I can tell you my rent went up a lot of money and I'm in the city of Miami. So I want to know it's what she's saying because she's breaking through in the MAGA precincts. So unless the GOP has a very high turnout in December, she's going to take it. That's just me. And then hold on. This guy does like a lot of data here in like just in general. But in November 2024, we had, or Trumpism had leaned out the Democrats' advantage in Miami, where they were only +6 points, right? After Tuesday's elections, the Democrats, because they had a crazy turnout, the Democrats actually went to +14. So we saw a lot of celebration. We saw a lot of people, a lot of our friends from the GOP, local Republicans, celebrating that their candidate had advanced to the runoff, and that's a good thing. But it's not a good thing when in third place, a socialist by the name of Ken Russell is trailing right behind him at 17.5%. Mm-hmm. And he barely spent any money. He was broke as hell. I caught him doing a fundraiser on TikTok. He raised $10,000 overnight, while Emilio González has raised millions of dollars. And we checked his, especially Bella, she was checking some of his campaign transactions and expenditures. And this guy blew through so much money on campaign
Yeah, we're talking
management.
about $750,000 on just strategists, like just strategy firms. Like, how many strategy firms can you possibly need to run a city election? It sounds intense, but it took several strategy firms, and not to mention the power of DeSantis's personal attorneys for him to sue the city, because he used DeSantis's personal attorneys to sue the city in order to change the election date, which is another point that nobody wants to talk about, and that you and I always stood strong on this, that when they changed the election date, that would actually be better for the city of
Oh,
Miami,
please
because
elaborate on this.
as a result, it would have forced turnout.
Please
And
elaborate on
we
this.
just had the special election for a commission seat in the city of Miami, and it was a 10%
15%.
turnout. Even this election at a 20% had high turnout, at 20% turnout. So what we would love to see, and what people should want to see, especially those that advocate for, voter accessibility, African Americans can't get IDs, don't have access to the internet or whatever, like those kinds of people in particular, you'd think they'd be advocating to change the election to a date where more people can participate. Instead, what you have is a uniparty response, interestingly enough, from the left and from the right, calling outrage over the idea that elections would be changed to even year Novembers, which would increase voter participation. But for some reason in Miami, where
Everything is
paellas are
corruption.
controversial, and
Everything is corruption.
neon ads are controversial, that's corruption. Apparently in Miami, wanting to increase voter turnout ends up equaling out corruption to the uniparty. And that part, I think, was incredibly interesting. Another part that's interesting about that fact is the idea that there's some kind of Mandela effect, that Francis and Carollo voted in favor of changing the election date.
Can you start from the beginning for the people that are just tuning in? Can you clarify
So let's
lawsuit? Can you clarify that, please?
So the City of Miami Commission a few months back had made the decision, along with two other municipalities in Miami-Dade County, North Miami Beach and Coral Gables, that had made independent decisions within their municipalities to change the election dates to even years during November in order to increase voter turnout. It went through in Coral Gables, it went through in North Miami, but for some reason in the city of Miami, it was used to paint corruption. This is the face of corruption in Miami. We're going to change the elections to even years so that more people could participate, and as a result, that's corruption, because it would have extended the sitting term for the sitting individuals there by a year, and God forbid that happened, and they're the most horrible people ever. Anyways, point of the matter is that, of course, in the city of Miami, where we're like, I called it today. I said the city of Miami is like your friend that came from a 2-parent household, grew up in like Coco Plum, went to Lourdes, got a G-Wagon when they graduated, got accepted
to work.
Their choice of like Princeton, Harvard, Yale, and then they turn around and they tell you, you have no idea how hard my life was. That's what corruption in Miami is like. It's like the idea that we would change an election so that more people would participate, and that could be labeled as corruption, goes to show that it's all driven by a media narrative. Anyways, all that to say this: the City Miami Commission changes the vote, does the vote. They approve that they're going to change the election to November, and then here comes Emilio González with his DeSantis, private DeSantis legal team to contest that, and he sued the city and won, and they had to change back the decision to change it from even years back into these odd years, November, which adds the result of that is this lower voter turnout that we're seeing, which actually helped Democrats.
Right.
The reality is we would have had the advantage if we would have waited for November next year, but Emilio González and Team Ron DeSantis really had to make sure that they ran this year. And I think it's part, again, what we saw through the primaries, a continuation of that Cold War where DeSantis really wanted to claim ownership of Miami. And I think that the average person nationwide doesn't understand the difference between city of Miami and Miami-Dade County. So to them, it's all the same thing. So If he can have, like we already know, right, what it is, which is that if he can have his guy in there and then his guy endorses his wife or Jay Collins or whoever it is that he's going to put in the race, then he can say, no, Miami is DeSantis country and not Trump country, as we know that it is. But that's the part with the lawsuit, which again just like cracks me up, because we were for today. You read some of these stories of what the corruption is, and you're like, you've got to be shitting me. Look at the senators. And Alex said the senators
we have to go in order. We're gonna get there now.
I'm getting ahead of myself, but I mean,
we were all for changing the election to even years.
Yes.
And the reason why we were for changing the election was because we wanted a higher election turnout, and we know that Republicans simply don't do well in off years. They just don't. And if next year we have a governor race, how do you think, and Trump is behind Byron Donalds, our voter turnout would have been so great that we would have probably not had any of these problems. We would have not gone to a runoff election, and we would have probably kept the city of Miami. But with that being said, we're laying the foundation on exposing a lot of stuff that we have discovered, which is what we like to call the Miami media matrix. If you don't follow Bella, she was finally able to get back on Instagram because of the Miami media matrix. She was banned from Instagram for 4 years, and that's a story for another day. But in her first post, you can see detailed who the Miami media matrix are. And these are operatives and media people here. And it's the Miami Herald and their reporters. It's the Miami New Times and their reporters. It's a filmmaker by the name of Billy Corbin. So if you've ever seen Cocaine Cowboys, he is, this is his one-hit wonder. And because he doesn't make any money really doing these documentaries anymore, then he has become a full-time paid operative here in Miami, city of Miami, Miami-Dade. And then you also have other operatives like Thomas, what's his name?
Thomas Kennedy.
Grant Stern.
Usual suspects, Eileen del Valle, Grant Stern.
There is what we like to call the Miami media matrix, and they have been pretty much driving the narrative in this town for many years, until we stumbled upon who they were, and the way that we stumbled upon these people and their opposition and the dirty tricks that they create and hoaxes and things like that was when we became involved in our local politics. And when we started going to the school board, as you guys know, we had a lot of opposition, and we have so much content on this channel about that. But we come 2021, really, that's when we started getting more involved in the city of Miami Commission. We see a lot of opposition against a man named Joe Carollo, who he was termed out anyways, but he did run and lost, got 4th place in the city of Miami race by not doing anything, by the way. Like, he didn't campaign at all. He didn't waste any money. Like, he told us straight up to Bella and I, to our faces, that the only thing that he did was send, how many, Bella?
17,000 flyers opposing Emilio and 17,000 flyers promoting himself. That's it. That was his campaign.
Right. The content that I did, he didn't pay me for that. He didn't recruit me. He literally apologized to me because he was like, I just didn't care. Like, I wasn't into it. And I was like, that's fine. I've had your back since 2021. It's an honor, really.
Yeah.
We noticed back then, Francis Suarez was woke. Francis Suarez was not the mayor that we have now. And he decided to bring down a corrupt, woke cop. His name is Art Acevedo. You guys can Google this guy. This guy came from Houston. And Art was the type of guy that was literally kneeling with BLM. And we all had a problem with that, like, as a citizen, right? So we started pushing back. And then we see that, the city of Miami commissioners, Joe Carollo being one of them, was completely opposed to this guy. And they get him out of the commission.
Art Acevedo is a huge part. It can't be overstated what a huge part of the story he is.
And thank you, Maylene, for your super chat. And guys, if you're just getting here, please like this video so you can get in the algorithm, share it, subscribe to our channel, and support us. So we have this corrupt cop here, and he starts clashing heads with the Cubans at the City of Miami Commission, right? Joe Carollo Joe Carollo was doing Trump before Trump was Trump, okay? Just people don't know this. He's 7 years old. He's been in politics in Miami since he was like 18 years old, okay? He was the youngest Miami commissioner ever elected to the city of Miami at 24 years old. He ran for mayor of the city of Miami. He won his race. The second time he ran in 1997, he ran against Xavier Suarez, who's Francis Suarez's dad, and they actually cheated the election, and Xavier won the election, and Carollo contested it legally, and ended up being that he found fraud in absentee ballots.
Literally Trump. Before Trump.
He finds the fraud, and 20 people go to jail, and he gets reinstated as mayor after losing because of the fraud. Okay. This is the guy that they call corrupt, right? 3 months after he's in office as mayor, the feds come down and tell him that they're arresting 3 people from the City of Miami Commission, his city manager, I think, the treasurer, and another commissioner for fraud. This guy's clean as hell. Anyways, fast forward, he becomes commissioner. Now, I need you guys to understand, and this is where we're gonna go. Carollo is a slime ball for the ball and chain stuff. No, he's not, because it's so crazy.
Thank you for the setup.
Thank you, because we're getting ready to tell this story. Ball and chain is not a small mom and pop shop business like the media has painted these people to be. These are powerful developers who brag about, they're called the Burlington Group. Okay, that is a parent company of Ball and Chain. Those are the developers, and then Ball and Chain is in their commercial space. And these are the developers who have bragged about basically taking over all of Little Havana and Calle Ocho, and they have over 20 places throughout that entire strip. Let's start with that to begin with.
Let's talk about it.
Okay, that is the Burlington Group. Okay, they brag about having 1.5. Go ahead, Bella.
We mine opportunities and curate properties and uncover their potential. We've got a portfolio of $250 million. We see values where others don't. This is like really insulting. For somebody that grew up in Little Havana, this is just... Little Havana's revival is interwoven with the Burlington Group. That's the part that really threw me over the edge last time. Little Havana's revival is interwoven with the Burlington Group, as if though Little Havana wasn't special, couldn't thrive, wasn't thriving without the Burlington Group that just put an annoying bar in the middle of 8th Street. But that's a story for another day. But this idea that Carollo's a slime ball for what happened at Ball and Chain, this is exactly what the problem with the narrative is. Most people do not know that Joe Carollo had a reputation for being the most uncorruptible individual in all of City of Miami politics. His entire career, until William Fuller, and the people over at Ball and Chain come around. And these are not, let me actually pull up this headline. While we tell you the story, because again, as somebody who grew up in Little Havana, this kind of stuff is really insulting for me. Linda, I'm looking for did I send it to you? The one headline that says the two men in Little Havana decide.
No, I say less. Continue the story, Wired. I know exactly what I'm in your head. Continue the story, please. Continue.
So most people do not know, because there is no local media that ever covered this kind of stuff, because let's be honest, all of Miami's local media for the most part is pay for play. It's all about who do you know, who's paying you, to whose advantage is it. I'm not saying that it's all either pay for play or power for play, or one or the other. And it's just so interesting how every single publication in Miami for years and years and years and years described Joe Carollo as the most uncorruptible guy ever, until the issue with ball and chain comes up.
And the issue with ball and chain, I just texted you that headline. Let me just preface, is that when they come around, they were doing whatever they wanted in Calle Ocho. Okay, you can still find articles. Even the Herald, who hates Joe Carollo, Bill Fuller, the owner, had the habit of doing things first and then asking for permission later. What does that mean? For example, that big pineapple stage that you see in the back is the only stage in that commercial area in that entire area. What is that all around? That is residential. That is viejitos, a lot of them old people who live around there. Okay. They had so many different violations all throughout their properties in Calle Ocho, which is why they started getting in trouble with the city. Okay. So they make up this whole narrative where it was because back in 2017, these two gentlemen decided to support Joe Carollo's, the person who was running against them for commission. So a guy named Alfie Leon. And they actually had an event inside of Ball and Chain. And within the entire investigation of Joe Carollo, there's an ethics complaint sort of memo, right? When they finalized, is Joe Carollo actually targeting this businessman in Little Havana? And it turns out that they have to admit how many illegal things they were doing in their businesses, including using random lots in Little Havana for their valet. There was a point where they didn't have sprinklers, where they were serving alcohol outside without a liquor license, where they were selling food outside without a grease trap. I mean, they were throwing parties in parking lots in some of their properties without having an actual permit. All of these things are illegal. They're against city code. Okay. So you may think that it's fucked up that whether it's him or another commissioner is cracking down on people, on these businesses, they were illegally doing things and getting caught. And as opposed to saying, we fucked up as a business, we will fix whatever issues we have. And by the way, they did in some cases. I want to make sure that you guys all know that too. Instead, they were working with other city officials who were just brushing these things under the table and not giving a crap. Carollo wasn't like that. He was not going to let these people slide. He was cracking the whip in all establishments, not just Ball and Chain. Now think about it. If you have that many places down in 8th Street, you're going to probably be targeted because you have that many more places.
You're going to feel targeted as a result that if they're cracking down on all the businesses on 8th Street, you have more businesses. So it feels targeted. But the best example of that is actually articles that were written that discussed how the owners of El Pub, a long time business of Little Havana on 8th Street and 16th Ave, that supported Joe Carollo. I think Joe Carollo even had his celebratory party when he was voted in as commissioner at El Pub. They as well received compliance reports, and they're right across the street from Ball and Chain. This was never a you're being targeted thing. This was always they wanted to play by their own rules.
Right. And
they wanted to play by their own rules, and they didn't like it.
And that's how the entire story of Joe Carollo allegedly, which never happened, targeting the Fuller and the other partner for supporting his opponent in 2017. That is just a complete fabrication.
Well, I mean, to understand Joe Carollo's history is to understand why that's a complete fabrication. There was, like, in fairness, guys, like, he is the Trump of Miami. This guy raised $30 million for his city of Miami race that he, by the way, did not run, only sent out 34,000 flyers. That was his big contribution to his race. He raised $30,000. People throw money at this guy because of the long-term reputation that he's had in this community for being a positive member of our community. So whatever the foolers and the Miami media matrix machine have been able to do to Carollo's reputation over the last couple of years might have affected him with donors, might have affected him with some voters, but it didn't affect him with donors who have continued to contribute to his campaign. So why do I say that? He didn't need to be upset about some Democrat that was like pacing in single digits against him. This idea that it's like, oh, they supported my competitor. Why would Joe Carollo care about that? It would be like Donald Trump losing sleep over Chris Christie. Like, it's not like it's not relevant.
Right. But we even found in the ethics report documented how Bill Fuller had to admit that even that event with Alfie Leon was illegal.
Did break code.
And how he had that when he found out, he says in the report, which I think I still have it up, when he found out that that he was breaking code, controlled fine, right? When he found out that he was breaking code, he stopped the event, right? And I can show you guys that. Hold on one second. Actually, I just pulled it up. I can share the screen, right? Okay, no, I can't. Window. StreamYard. Okay, here we go. All right, can you guys see that? Yeah, you can see it. So this is an ethics, this is an ethics complaint investigation report, Fuller versus Carollo. I mean, this goes back, if you see here, to 2018. And it's a lot of pages, but it basically also talks about that alleged, that incident with Carollo's, with the guy that allegedly, hold on, here we go. Commissioner Joe Carollo's pre-election illicit interference with a complaint. So Fuller, who's the owner, alleges, this goes back to 2017, alleges that during a rally for Alfie Leon, Carollo's opponent in the runoff election District 3, Miro arrived and proceeded to photograph the event, confronting attendees and questioning the nature and legality of the event. The rally was held on a lot owned by Fuller. City of Miami court enforcement inspectors, as well as the police, arrived shortly after, shutting down the event. Fuller learned that Carollo, with the assistance of Miro Parjo's legal, whatever, some people called the city special events department and code enforcement to demand a shutdown. Fully received a text from Miro the following day confirming that Carollo camp was responsible for the shutdown. Okay. Where is that part, Bella, where they talk about the guy didn't know and hold on.
Look up JLP.
JLP.
Go to control, find JLP.
JLP. Oh, yeah. JLP. Okay. All right. Regarding the Alfie Leon campaign rally on his property, fully advised that he had not been aware of the nature of the event prior to his shutdown. He said he thought it was a nonpartisan Get Out to Vote rally organized by Jenny Lee Molina of JLPR. Fuller stated that once he found out that it was a Get Out to Vote rally for Leon, he also asked, so it was shut down. We didn't want to choose side, further stating that he even called Carollo's aid. Anyways, all that to show you guys that this idea, as Bella said, that Joe Carollo was just infatuated with these two businessmen because they threw a rally back.
Well, no, the idea, right? Yeah.
It's just a complete fabrication because they were actually doing illegal
to
shit.
Fabricate a motive, right? Because they have to fabricate a motive to then make the rest of the narrative land, which is that they were being unfairly targeted by Joe Carollo. Never mind that Joe Carollo was issuing compliance violations to all of Little Havana. Never mind that Joe Carollo has a lifelong career of being a whistleblower, of being a person that works with that goes against current. Never mind all of that.
Who literally found fraud and voting and illegal voting absentee ballots.
Which, by the way, like the QAnon wet dream, like they arrested what, like 20 something people
20 people. He
related to the
people.
actual election fraud. In fact, it's until this day used nationwide as an actual example of like, oh, when you're talking about like, oh, this is what real election fraud looks like, people will reference Joe Carollo's case. Anyways, all that, the idea that he was targeting this business because they supported a competitor in a campaign in a district that he was
very popular,
bounds, right, in popularity, ready to win. It's just it's so dishonest. It's so dishonest. It's so intellectually dishonest. And in fairness, we have to issue self-control sometimes, because we also understand that the narrative is effective when all of local Miami media is covering this particular story in the same way, in the same tone, and you're seeing it repeated time and time and time and time again. Then yeah, likely your response is going to be to think, wow, that Joe Carollo guy really is corrupt. But the reality is that we need to start training. And I mean, this is one podcast. This is my new personality. You know, I'm sure that Billy Corbin is going to end up listening to this, or somebody in their camp is going to end up listening to it. There's nothing more important than this. These people did a coup on the city of Miami. I don't think that we went into like full detail as far as we want to go into that, but we will.
No, but hold on. This is how the Joe Carollo thing starts, right? For the person, that's how it starts. It starts off with allegedly he's fighting with these small businesses or these businesses in Little Havana. We already showed you, they're not a small business. They're a multi-million-dollar developer group who owns Ball and Chain and owns many other places. Futurama is another one. The Taco Place is another one, and a lot of other places. And we move on to and also there's the aspect of cultural appropriation and protection, because Joe Carollo represents the old Cuban American that first got here back in the 60s, okay, who's extremely paranoid about communism and socialism.
Rightfully so.
And that generation is dying off. And part of his fight with the people, with his developers in Little Havana, was that when they wanted to culturally appropriate the Cuban culture, really, because that's what it is in Little Havana, while completely not giving a crap really about the residents in that area who are working class, and in many cases actually pretty freaking poor. Okay, so there's loud music going on. The people are contacting their commissioner. That's what you're supposed to do. Bella does it all the time with her commissioner in Miami-Dade. If something is going on, that's who you contact.
So noise complaint, the wall across the street isn't painted, whatever it is. Like there's people like me, we exist and we call.
Right. So these viejos, these older Cubans, are calling Joe Carollo's office saying, we can't sleep. It's going on at our hours of the night. Why? Because of the stage that the Fullers built and the pineapple, the famous pineapple in the back of Ball and Chain. The parking, they're taking over a street parking. You guys know, if you live in Miami, that's a busy area. But behind this street and behind that street, it's all residential. You can literally walk to Ball and Chain from residences. And they were completely, really being a nuisance to the entire freaking neighborhood. So you call your commissioner, and your commissioner works for you. The developers are not supposed to elect these commissioners. They're supposed to.
That's what we call special interest.
Right.
That's the bad guys. That's what we call corruption. Right. When an elected official puts the needs of special interest before the residents of their community.
Right.
Something that Joe Carollo didn't do.
So all these years, you have the Billy Corbins of the world, the crazy Joe. He's paranoid about Venezuelan money. We have a lot of more info, which we planned to do in other videos. But we fast forward to when Joe Carollo is sued, the Fullers sue Joe Carollo in a civil federal lawsuit, and he loses that lawsuit because allegedly he violated the First Amendment rights of these businessmen of Little Havana. Now, I want to touch on the sham trial, which most people don't know about, and that will be very quickly. The first thing is, by law, you're supposed to have a jury of your peers. So in the case of Joe Carollo, he's supposed to have a trial in Miami-Dade County with a jury of his peers, okay? What they did was that they said that Miami-Dade had a conflict of interest with Joe Carollo, and therefore his case had to be moved to Broward County, one of the most corrupt counties in probably the entire Southeast and probably the entire state and nation. Okay, that's where they tried to steal the election from Ron DeSantis back in 2018. But anyways, so now we start off with the fact that Carollo's trial is in Broward County. They give the Fullers 18 or 19 days to state the case. They only give Carollo 3 days. They don't allow him to do, like a full investigation discovery. They don't allow him to bring in his, the business owners that were complaining about the Fullers. They don't allow him to bring in his constituents that wanted to testify against the Fullers because how of a nuisance they became in Little Havana. They don't allow him to do that, but they allowed the Fuller and their witnesses to basically call Joe Carollo a racist on the stand and do all sorts of reputational damage so they could dirty up the jury pool. The jury pool, we had 4 Black people. The judge was an Obama-appointed Black judge, and they're calling a white Cuban American guy racist over and over again. You had other people in the jury pool that were from California, I think 2 of them. And anyways, this is how we get a guilty verdict, right?
But also, and this is also the very relevant part, the guilty verdict. This is the equivalent of E. Jean Carroll's civil lawsuit against President Trump, and how just because she won that lawsuit doesn't mean that you get to call Trump a rapist because you'll get sued. Because Trump was never criminally charged of such a thing, the same way that Joe Carollo was cleared of all criminal charges because there was no corruption that was found.
And this happened this year in April 20. They cleared him of all charges because they found that he was doing his job, guys. That's what he was doing. He was doing his job, okay? So we have all the people that say, how come he's not removed? How come they keep voting for him? Well, they keep voting for him because they like the fact that he has defended the rights of the citizens of Little Havana versus these developers, right? So that's the Joe Carollo story, more or less. But at the same time, Republicans don't like him because they believe all the lies of the mainstream media. During this time, there is another commissioner. His name is Alex Díaz de la Portilla. He was in District 3, right? No, not 3.
No, not 3. Was it 6?
1. I think it was 1.
1. It was 1.
Okay. Another great MAGA Republican. Now, sometime within 2023, the news come out that Alex Díaz de la Portilla has been arrested.
Homegrown Cuban-American representative of his community that lived, breathed, ate Miami-Dade.
It comes out that he has been arrested for corruption charges. Wow, more crazy news coming out of the city of Miami. Banana Republic, third world country. That's what Willie Corbin calls it. Bribery charges, money laundering, and all sorts of things. The guy is literally booked. There's a mugshot of him that you could see. And this happened 1 month before his reelection. You know what I call that? Election interference, okay? But he's able to run for reelection, but it doesn't matter because as he is facing these charges, Governor DeSantis removes him from the Miami Commission. Wow, how perfect. What a perfect thing to do for DeSantis, okay? And when he removes him,
it's important to say that Alex Díaz de la Portilla was one of the first local politicians to endorse Donald Trump, and that he was removed right around the time of the primaries when DeSantis needed the endorsements of everyone. So there was no fight to keep him as a result that he was a hardcore MAGA warrior.
Right. So before he's even convicted of said crimes, they remove this MAGA commissioner from the City of Miami Commission. They have a special election, and surprise, surprise, a Democrat wins his seat. So now we're -1. Now we're -1 person in the commission. Joe Carollo is still there, but he's fighting the entire media matrix because he doesn't bend the knee to his developers, right? And the media, who Republicans also believe. So he's the anti-establishment guy, right? Now we get a new Democrat in. A week later, this Democrat gets in. I don't know if it was a week or a month later. They decided, okay, so now we lost one. We lost that commissioner. Carollo's in trouble. And a week later, they remove the sitting attorney, the City Attorney Victoria Méndez. Now, that's a whole other story, which we will break down, but I'll give you guys the summary of what happened. Victoria Méndez is supposed to protect the interests of the city, and she's supposed to defend the city in legal cases. That's why she is an attorney. And the Fullers, the developers in Little Havana, didn't like the fact that she was defending Joe Carollo. That is her job, because they are not suing just Joe Carollo. They're suing Joe Carollo in the capacity as a commissioner for the city of Miami. Therefore, our city attorney has to defend him because she's the attorney for city of Miami. Well, they didn't. Right. They didn't like that part. They were upset, so they found a way to remove her, right? And the way that they removed her, and we know this is
it's a little elaborate. I think that maybe that's a whole episode for another day.
A whole episode where it was a hoax, right? Because they ended up saying that her husband has a business, and her husband's business buys houses from this guardianship program that, you know, they have like houses of like older people that maybe they have liens in the houses, or they have too much things to, and they don't have the money, whatever. But they basically ends up completing this hoax that her and her husband were flipping these houses from these old people, and it was corruption and blah, blah, blah. So they remove her with a vote after they remove Díaz de la Portilla, and they get in this new Democrat. How convenient. Now we lose our city attorney, and now we lose the
one MAGA Republican warrior short on the city of Miami.
What do you know? A few weeks after they remove the city attorney and they get somebody else in, the Fullers get a $12 million settlement. Are you guys seeing the picture?
The timeline. I'm just here to show the timeline, the facts, the timeline of the facts. Let's also point out something that I think is also really interesting now that you bring De La Portilla up before we move on. So where does the investigation from Alex Díaz de la Portilla come from?
That's right.
Well, the Miami-Dade ethics investigator just decided that it was going to be, I got to look into that guy. That guy, there's corruption there, and I got to look into it. The problem, however, is that this gentleman by the name of Carl Ross, very recently, Mayor for Coral Gables, Vince Lago, addressed the Miami-Dade County Board of County Commissioners, where he said that in the discovery for a personal defamation lawsuit that he was doing against his reputation, he found that his attorneys had reasonable reason to believe that Carl Ross had leaked details of his investigation to people within Billy Corbin circles. Elaine del Valle, Political Cortadito, Actualidad Radio. We just think that when you start seeing those overlaps, so the same guy that did the ethics investigation for Alex Díaz de la Portilla also did the ethics investigation for Vince Lago, who also gets attacked by Billy Corbin, who also did the investigation for Vicky Méndez, who also got attacked by Billy Corbin, who also did the investigation for Frank Carollo, Carollo's brother.
Francis Suarez as well.
Who also did the investigation for Francis Suarez, who Billy Corbin hates. I just here to show you the patterns, guys. Just here to show you the patterns.
Eventually, Alex Díaz de la Portilla gets, where is it? That's not it. Eventually, Alex Díaz de la Portilla gets cleared of all, hold on. Did I remove, where is it? It's this one, add to stage. He eventually gets cleared of all charges, but it's already too late because he's no longer a commissioner. How convenient. And I want to make sure, by the way, this is the memo that the investigation, like when the investigation concluded, this was the memo that the investigator put out. So it talks about the timing of events, and you could see how the whole thing was a hoax. But I think it's really telling in the conclusion where they say this case failed to meet the legal standards for prosecution. The evidence does not demonstrate corrupt intent, unlawful benefits, or falsification of records. Witness testimony is unreliable, and lawful actions have been misconstrued as criminal, right? So nothing of what they alleged that they said that Díaz de la Portilla did was unlawful. Substantial follow-up investigation and depositions have occurred that reveal the foundation of this entire investigation was misguided and buttered by unverified information. In a purely circumstantial case, as opposed to a case with direct evidence, the state is required to present complete evidence inconsistent with the defendant's theory of defense. Here, the state does not possess competent evidence to present a jury that would allow them to exclude every reasonable hypothesis of innocence beyond a reasonable doubt, particularly the hypotheses that each of the acts were suspicious but legal. So that is the hoax of how they removed a MAGA commissioner, who, by the way, has a mugshot, but everything that they said that he did was completely legal.
But it doesn't matter.
But it doesn't matter
because Ken Russell, who was running for City of Miami commissioner, still went up during his debate and still said, at least I wasn't dragged out of the city commission in handcuffs like you were. At least I wasn't corrupt like you were. So it doesn't matter that these people are found innocent, because the damage is in the mugshot, in the reputational Google, in the SEO of being able to search up your clean conservative candidate, Alex Díaz de la Portilla, and now instead of getting a lifelong career in politics and commitment to public service, you got a mugshot for a crime that he didn't commit.
And we are going to elaborate, and I think I probably will next week as well, with our city attorney, Victoria Méndez. We end up coming, there was a deposition of sorts where the judge asked for a lot of documents to be turned over to him for evidence purposes. And in the evidence, 400 pages worth of evidence, which we now have under our possession, you could see a clear coordination between Bill Fuller, the owner of Ball and Chain, a peer agent by the name of Denise Galvez Turos, who ran in District 3 and lost again. So 4 times she loses. Their lawyers, Billy Corbin, and some other people. And the coordination of emails, which we will show, we have to organize. That's a whole show on its own. That's an entire separate chapter of the story. It shows how the owners of Ball and Chain wanted to find a person that would sue Victoria Méndez and her husband for allegedly taking advantage of them and buying off their home.
Work backwards. And gotta find a victim.
We gotta find a victim. And it shows them paying the lawyers, and it shows the coordination with Billy Corbin, and it shows the coordination with the media person that broke the story, a guy named Daniel and Josh Ceballos from WLRN. And it shows Sarah Blasky from the Miami Herald, which she was around, and it shows you exactly how they created the hoax.
And
but it doesn't matter.
Have everything.
But it doesn't matter because that she was removed from office. Yeah. So what we have realized is that when Democrats don't get the political outcome that they want, and we saw this in 2016 with Trump, they make up these hoaxes with the help of the media, with the help of the operatives, with the help of influencers like Billy Corbin, and they get the political outcome that they want, which is to kick out your opposition. If it's a city manager that doesn't want to give you a $12 million settlement, if it's Alex Díaz de la Portilla because, well, he's a MAGA commissioner and we want to get our guy in there, if it's Joe Carollo because allegedly he was targeting these mom and pop businesses, even though they're worth millions of dollars, it doesn't matter. They're able to do it, and they're able to do it well. And if you need a big example of that to understand, well, how come this is going on in the city of Miami? Well, it happened to Donald Trump with the Russian collusion, right? How did they get half of the country to believe that he was an illegitimate president, as they said, and undermine his presidency if it wasn't because allegedly foreign intervention, foreign powers, a foreign nation, Vladimir Putin and his cronies were the ones that pulled the 2016 election hoax. As a result of that, don't forget, Donald Trump was impeached.
What needs to be
Roger Stone went to jail, right?
Well, don't forget how that case ends up coming up. It is a leak of Russian collusion that went to the media, who reported on the leak, and then the news article that claimed that this leak showed Russian interference. It's what was used to justify the investigation into Donald Trump. It is exactly the formula that is being used in Miami, not with one politician, not with two. We've seen the pattern repeated time and time and time and time and time again. And it's the same core group of people. And they've attacked every conservative politician. And there's a lot of content here. There's a lot of stories that need to be told. But I since we're getting ready to like wrap this up, I think it's important to say something. We started talking about this around the elections. Linda and I are we both have justice warriors. We both have like justice warrior spirits where we feel like it's our job to wrong rights. So if you guys thought that we were paid by Carollo or we were paid by Brian Calvo or we were paid by any candidate during election season to stop talking about it, no, we have never been more convicted to speak on these things, to talk about how a true media matrix in Miami has shifted politics, has stolen momentum from conservatives, has
allowed it to happen.
And has allowed it to happen.
Allowed it to happen.
They have allowed it to happen.
I'm not going to say any names, and I'm going to be very surface level in case people what we know are listening to this.
Don't go Kanye.
I'm going to tell you guys one of the most disheartening, disgusting things that I saw post-election, right? So we already told you guys that we're going into a runoff, and December 9th is going to be between Democratic mayoral candidate Eileen Higgins, who got a blue wave, and then we're going to have Emilio González, who's the GOP and candidate, DeSantis-backed candidate. And when these two are run off to the election, in third place was Ken Russell, another Democrat, more on the socialist side, and then the fourth place was Joe Carollo, who didn't campaign, didn't put any money. I was actually literally stalking him for weeks before he was like, fine, I'll give you an interview, like whatever. And I wanted to help him so bad since the minute that he announced, but he just didn't care. And he comes in fourth place, 11.5% of the vote by doing nothing. Okay, literally nothing, which is but we see all these Republicans celebrating like if it was a great accomplishment to get this guy out of the commission. Regardless, he was termed out, so that's fine. And it's actually better that the voters got him out as opposed to what Bill Fuller wanted to do. At some point, they did a recall for Joe Carollo, which went nowhere because that was another hoax and a PR stunt. But anyways, all that to say is that we see all this Republicans celebrating like this was like this was their greatest fucking op, right? Like the guy that didn't want homelessness, the guy that voted to get out of this woke cop, the guy that has stopped communist infiltration in our city. This was their biggest opposition. I mean, you thought this guy was like fucking Saddam Hussein or someone, right? Like this is the villain that they painted. And in one of the stories, we see someone say something to the extent of, thank God we got rid of Joe Carollo because he was holding the city hostage and all sorts of things. At that same time that person's celebrating with a little photo op and champagne raised up, Bella and I are talking to Joe Carollo's constituents who are telling us that Joe Carollo saved them from being homeless because he saved their home. And he did this to 5 different viejitos that she told us about. And this woman was way older. She's con un bastón. I don't know how to say that. A walker, right?
A walker.
With a walker. We don't know what we're going to do without you because you've always been there. Look at my little cat. Look, a little groipy. Hi. We don't know what we're going to do without you. And because you've always been there for us.
Right.
So you have the elitist Republicans of Miami rejoicing that their biggest op, the 70-year-old boomer, is leaving Miami politics after having an amazing career, better than they've ever had, and being a legend, while we have an elderly person telling us how he saved her home in Little Havana.
Her home and 5 other elderly women.
And I want you to see the disconnection between the Miami GOP elite and MAGA populism, which is what Joe Carollo represents. I also want to clarify that the charges in Alex Díaz de la Portilla's fucking hoax were completely, everything was dropped.
Everything was dropped.
He was getting ready
was dropped. Vicky's was dropped.
15 month, okay? 15-month persecution. He's getting ready to go on trial. And overnight, out of nowhere, the Broward state attorney, because also his case was deferred to Broward.
Of course.
Okay, not Miami-Dade, decides to say that all of the charges were dropped in the hoax of Alex Díaz de la Portilla, who's no longer in the commission. So it was a silent coup. They will probably...
No, it wasn't silent. It was far from silent because the reputational damage is there. The reputational damage there of people that are otherwise... So it's... Imagine all they have to do is throw mud at the best of our best, the best of our representatives, the best of the people that give their life to public service. And then you've got Republicans that are just going to attach their wheels to that. What was it that they called... We need a resistance. No, the hell we don't. And I really meant what I said today in my story. Miami is incredibly spoiled. We don't have real struggle. The cases of corruption, sure, there's corruption like there is anywhere else, but not this idea of Cuban mafias and third world countries and banana republics. Why? Because a museum wants to have a jumbotron up in downtown Miami. Right, the Paella Gate scandal, the true conspiracy between Joe Carollo and Alex Díaz de la Portilla was that they went to go serve paella at a senior center. True corruption in Miami. Paella Gate, they named it. It's just...
Oh, look, Alex Díaz de la Portilla says, my lawsuit is coming and my part will go to charity. Well, yeah, you need to sue the fuck out of these people.
Yeah, and the charity should be honest media. That's what we need.
Yeah.
We need the WLRN public dollars that go to WLRN to honest media. There needs to be a change where these people need to be held accountable for the lies that they say.
Yeah.
And the stories that they perpetuate and what it cost us, what it cost our community.
Yeah. Looking at the nation, do you think the rates have turned Latinos away from voting red? Yes, I do. And by the way, if you guys have any questions, you can do them now. We'll stay on for another 5 to 7 minutes. Yes, I absolutely think that the rates are turning Latinos away from voting red. I'll give you an example. Maria Elvira Salazar, she is extremely worried right now because she is in a purple district here in Miami.
It is played. I think we've got the video, don't we?
Yeah, it is a district that is purple. It is a district that used to be the representative for that district.
The most Hispanic.
The representative for her district used to be Donna Shalala. And now they are going to run our current county mayor, who's a very sensible, Democrat, Daniela Levine Cava, and that is a huge risk to the GOP.
Somebody who won the Miami-Dade County race during primaries with almost a 70% of the vote. So let's play this video.
Right.
And diverse districts in the country. And unfortunately, Latinos are leaving the Republican Party after giving us a monumental chance in 2024. Latinos made history just 1 year ago. 1 in 2 Hispanics gave President Trump and the Republican Party a chance for the first time ever. 55% of Hispanic males voted for President Trump, something that was unthinkable. But I've said it before, the Hispanic vote is not guaranteed. Hispanics married President Trump, they're only dating the GOP.
That's me.
I've been warning it. If the GOP does not deliver, we will lose the Hispanic vote all over the country. And unfortunately, it happened last night. In New Jersey and Virginia, Hispanics moved back more than 25 points to the Democratic Party. 25 points. Let's be clear, in Virginia and New Jersey, the GOP would have had a much better chance of winning if the Hispanics vote would have stuck with the GOP. When we show up, we win. When we forget them, we lose. Hispanics want the same thing as any other American: secure borders, a good economy, get rid of the bad hombres. But they also want to give dignity to those who have been here for years and do not have a criminal record. People that may not have a legality, but who have been here contributing to the economy and to the country. Hispanics belong in the GOP. We have the same values: God-fearing, law-abiding, tax-paying, small government, freedom, hard work, and to live a dignified life in the promised land for those who do not have papers. This is our wake-up call. November 26th is 12 months away. We need to keep the House of Representatives in the hands of the Republicans, and the dignity law will make that miracle happen.
So actually perfect, because here we go. Didn't she want amnesty? Yes. So what she is talking about is a form of amnesty for individuals that have been here, that have no crimes, that have been working and contributed. And as the end result is, she wants that because she needs to advocate for that as a result of the makeup of her district. It's exactly what she's talking about in that video. You have to recognize how it is that that district is made up. And you know, and another conversation that Linda and I have been having about recently isn't just the raids, but in particular here in Miami-Dade, Alligator Alcatraz, and this presence of this big overinflated PR stunt of, you know, of people being picked up and sent to these centers, and people are watching non-criminals, and they're being sent into this community, into these detention centers, into this big PR stunt that leaves a bad taste in people's mouths. So
a lot of people that have been turned off by the raids, and particularly here in Florida, there's a lot of people that did not like the stunt that Ron DeSantis pulled in Alligator Alcatraz. I obviously think it's hilarious, not what they're doing to immigrants or anything, but just the name, the whole thing. But I can't compare myself. I don't have any legal family. I'm legal. But there's a lot of people here who may be legal, but their grandparents are not, and they're in limbo or they're in TPS. And so for me, a lot of what Maria Elvira is doing is just more symbolic to try to tell her constituency, look, I'm trying to work for you, right? Like, I'm trying to pass this, and I'm the one that's trying to speak for you in Washington, D.C. Diana, thank you, ladies, for all the insight. What do we do about this runoff voting wise? I mean, you know, it's really up to you. You obviously, Republicans, you know, show up in large numbers here in the city of Miami if they want to have a chance to win, because it is going to be a toss-up race, right? So there is a path for Emilio to win by getting the votes of, you know, the people that voted for Joe Carollo, Alex Díaz de la Portilla, and I think Xavier Suarez was very, very tiny. But
you would need that entire base to show up,
and more. Let's not forget about that. He would need that entire base and more. And so the question is the GOP going to show up and help him win and excite the MAGA base. Whoever excites, right? Because what we saw at the very beginning of this podcast, if you're just catching up, is that Higgins, the Democratic mayoral candidate, she is performing, she's competitive. I want to use the word competitive in Trump precincts, meaning that she can flip those votes, right, for her.
Yeah.
So unless Emilio's team, the GOP, gets their shit together and they say, okay, we need to show up in our precincts and we need to get the base out, it is a probability that Eileen will be the next mayor of the city of Miami. And I think that this would actually be so symbolic in a way. I know, bear with me, this actually may be the best path forward for the local GOP to get their shit together.
A wake up.
It's a wake-up call. The old generation, the old Cubans, right? The people that are 60 plus years old, maybe even, actually, I want to go into the 70s and 80s, like the Joe Carollos of the world. That generation is dying off. Those were the most politically involved people, the ones that old guard that held Miami down. Their children and grandchildren have forgotten what it's like. They actually never had a taste of socialism or communism. So they think their booming grandparents are just crazy. Like they call Crazy Joe. He's just paranoid about communism and socialism. Meanwhile, we can actually prove that there were businesses in Calle Ocho being funded by Venezuelan money. Okay, but that, again, a story for another day. That generation does not exist. We need the Gen X generation of Cuban Americans, okay, and Venezuelan Americans, and anybody else that wants to join the fight.
The daughters and son, the grandsons and granddaughters of political prisoners, the ones that heard the stories.
Rise the fuck up. And we need them to understand the media matrix, and we need them to understand that with that MAGA populism, this city, it's going to go back to a plus 30 Hillary Clinton win that we saw in 2016. Because what happened was Clinton won this county with plus 30 points. By 2020, Donald Trump has slashed through that, and Biden won only by plus 13%. By 2022, DeSantis won plus Miami-Dade with 20 points. By 2024, Donald Trump sweeps Miami-Dade. But guess what? That base, that Hispanic base, was only encouraged and only came out to vote because of MAGA populism. So if the local
GOP
doesn't understand that, they are going to lose not just the city of Miami, but also Miami. Also,
they'll lose the county, and they'll lose the House, and they'll lose Congress, and they'll lose everything that we have worked hard for.
That was my cat, guys. Alex, both of you are brilliant and articulate. It makes me very proud to see two words like you girls. Guys, thank you so much, Alex. We have never met Alex. This is something else that like people like make up in their heads. Like I was defending Joe Carollo, Alex Díaz de la Portilla, Vince Lago, and other people before they even knew who I was. Like they had no idea. None of this. I was like, Vince Lago is another one that I didn't meet him until last year. I was defending this guy back in 2021. Yep. He had no idea who I was. Same thing with Alex Díaz de la Portilla. Same thing with Vicky Méndez. Same thing with Joe Carollo. They had no idea who we were. But we because we had been attacked by the same machine, we were like, okay, these guys are victims too. Like we know they're elected leaders, but they're also victims.
Well, that was what made our story different, right? And what kind of cracked it is that as private citizens being attacked by the same machine, when you hear a politician say something like, oh, well, I'm not corrupt, maybe the media is after me, then maybe people are just like inclined, well, he's up there, they're politicians, they're going to say that. But when parents were getting attacked at school board meetings and, the same Josh Ceballos and Daniel Rivera of WLRN were writing stories about how parents were fascists and Nazis, when Billy Corbin was making videos calling parents conspirational for going to school board meetings, when we started seeing the patterns within our own things, it's what prompts us to be like, well, wait a minute. Let's start looking back at some of these stories that have the same patterns with the same people, the names repeated over and over again. And I think that what you guys are going to see is that our content is going to revolve a lot around exposing this, because it's more than just one live. These people were able to shift the narrative in Miami-Dade County through repetition through several different sources by hijacking all of it in order to hijack the narrative. So it's going to require that, yes, I am here to beat a dead horse. I like beating dead horses. And this is what I'm going to continue to talk about, what I'm going to continue to post about, because the story doesn't just have to be said. It needs to be repeated. And people need to be convinced, so that not so that you believe what I'm telling you, but so that you're capable of recognizing the patterns yourself. So that when you see the next story break about the next corrupt conservative politician that needs to be held accountable, you look for the names. You look for the Billy Corbins, for the Daniel Riveros, Josh Ceballos, David Winkers, JC Planas. You start looking for the repetitive names that come out over and over and over again, so that you yourself, without having to read my content, listen to Linda, listen to the podcast, will be able to tell this is likely bullshit. This is likely not true.
Yeah. We don't count on the Miami-Dade GOP. We are looking into our own plan of action. I'll leave it at that. The Miami-Dade GOP's chairman is a
not representative of our community.
He's a Jew. And I have nothing against Jewish people particularly, but this is a Catholic city, Hispanic Catholic city. And you know what? Maybe if he was a cool Jew, that'd be great and he was working, but he doesn't actually work at all. Like we told you guys at the very beginning of the podcast or this live, the first text message that I got about the election was at 2:56 p.m. on election day. Not social media posts. We went through his Twitter. There was no tweets reminding people to go vote. There was no emails reminding people to go vote. There was no campaigns. I think that they're just going to start helping out Emilio, which is good. This Saturday, they have a door knocking event. And, you know, this is not the first time that Kevin Cooper, that's his name, decides to drop the ball, unfortunately. And we don't think that anything will change at the Miami GOP, because to them, it's about taking pictures and look at me at Mar-a-Lago and I'm at this gala and next week you're going to see them and here's me and Byron Donalds and me and the governor and this is me at the Emilio González's party, and this is all that they care about. They don't actually care about the voter. They don't care about you. They think you're retarded. They think you are an idiot. And they don't care about voting turnout either. So as a result of that, we are going to just have to develop our own plan of action to help save the city. Because what worries all of us is that, you know, the fact that, listen, Joe Carollo was going to go away regardless. He's 70 years old. Okay. He was termed out.
Right. He maybe had one last term in here.
It's not the win that you think that he is. You couldn't, you genuinely, you can't even put him in jail like you want to because he's not corrupt, right? Whatever. So he was going to go away anyways, but we cannot allow them to do what they've done to Diaz de la Portilla, Carollo, Vicky Méndez. And it's not just them three. They did it to Francis Suarez. They've done it to Vince Lago,
Barbara Espino,
Fabian Basabe is another one.
They
do it to every
the list goes on and on and on and on and on.
Politician in Miami-Dade County, particularly those who are effective, those who are more pro-MAGA than not. They don't notice how they don't touch other people, but whatever. And we're not going to allow this to happen. So there's
also important to mention, because it's also very relevant. There's an attack on Cuban excellence.
Right.
They hate the representation of Cuban excellence in our community. They do hate that. It pisses them off. It's why they try so hard to link Cuban excellism with exceptionalism, with white supremacy, with privilege. They say that we're privileged. They say that wherever. So there is very much an attack. There is a personal note of this, of a group of people that hate to see what Cuban Americans have done in the city of Miami. They hate to see the influence of the Cuban vote. They hate to see that Cubans show up time and time again and vote and support Republicans and break the narratives and the chains about how Latinos vote. They hate and they resent that. And what you'll notice is that there is a pattern in attacking the best amongst the best of our Cuban American representation. there is a component of that.
The last thing I want to show you guys before we leave is this article, which I am going to post on our chat right now. Did it go through?
Yeah, it's there.
Okay.
Oh, I haven't seen it in the
share
chat.
your external link. Yes, share it. Okay, I think I just did. All right. This is an article for those of you who are interested, and you can go through this. Voter fraud, fact, myth. How it once tipped an election and why it doesn't happen very often. This is an article that talks about Joe Carollo and how he exposed voter fraud back in 1997. But the reason why I invite you guys to read this article is because they use this article to then basically say that Trump, that what Trump was trying to do in the 2020 election was not like Joe Carollo, because Joe Carollo actually had proved the voter fraud, and Trump wasn't able to do that. And if you are from Miami, you need to start learning about the history of politics in this city. Not what Billy Corbin has told you, not what the Miami Herald has told you, not what you believe Joe Carollo is. Joe Carollo is done. Bella and I have no business trying to defend this man's name. He's not paying any of us. It's not about that. But like I said, it's about the fact that if they're going to do it to him, this is my other cat, Khaleesi. As you could see, they're crazy cats. But it's, like we said, a matter of if they're going to do this to Carollo and Diaz de la Portilla and Vicky Méndez and the rest of people, they try to do it to me. They've tried to do it
Parents and you and me and other people that you guys don't even know. What Josue has to say has been attacked. El Caballo has been attacked. Like, no one is safe. No one is safe. Every single person in this community that can be a leading voice or a loud voice for conservative values is going to get attacked.
So why would any of us run for office? People ask me all the time, when are you going to run for office? And then what are you going to say, that I'm eating children at home? Like, what hoax are you going to say? That I smoked a joint 20 years ago when I was in my sorority, that I would that I got caught underage drinking when I was 19 years old at a college football game, and how that is an example of corruption? Like, what are you going to do? Right? Like, this is why good people don't go into politics. Joe Carollo exposed chats before people even knew what chats were. Love you, ladies. Thank you for what you do. You're very welcome. We are going to end the stream. We've gone for an hour and 36 minutes. We were actually on time this time. Very short notice. But we ask you guys to share this video if you're in the city of Miami or just Miami overall. People need to know about this, not just city of Miami. Share our content, share a video. We are obviously going to be more niche based and focus a lot on Miami politics, focus a lot on exposing all of these hoaxes and fraudulent, stories, fictional stories that have created this problem in the city. We want good people to run for office, but we need to clear the media first.
Yeah, we're taking it back. We're going to take the narrative back. We're going to make Miami a safe place to be a conservative again.
Right. So thank you so much for joining, and stay tuned because our podcast studio is almost done so that we can come back to weekly broadcasting. All right, guys, have a good night and take care. Bye.
Coming, guys. Bye.